Hey, what's up and welcome to this very new tutorial. My name is Mr. Popo and we are Popo. Today it's going to be a very special kind of interesting style of doing tutorials and breakdowns. I have here my friend Yunus Farah and he's
Hello,
a motion...
everybody.
There we go, the little cute voice. And I'm just going to be explaining to him the tutorial, and if there is anything, he's going to be asking some questions. Obviously, he has seen the final results and everybody should have seen the final result by now. If you haven't, it has been posted on my Twitter and it's been shared and reposted for quite some time, and I thought I'm just gonna go and dive deep into it and explain it to my friend here. As a precursor to everything, I need to mention clearly that this is not for beginners. So if you're just beginning in motion design and After Effects, this is not for you for now. You can save this for later.
Big boys only.
Big boys group only.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically this is what we have for today.
I like the impromptu sound effects.
But yeah, this is what we're gonna be doing. This is a very important project for me because I wanted to step aside from how we see holograms and try to create something. And one thing you would probably realize is when I designed this, as much as you feedbacked me many times on trying to do that, I tried to avoid it for one very simple reason, which is not creating anything around this hologram. No environment, as much as we could do it in so many styles, but I tried to avoid that to just focus on how this hologram would sit on itself. Just on itself. This hologram could be used, and ideas could be used in many forms. So that was the base of how this tutorial and this project came to be. So it's more of a trying to figure out a new style. So this is the hologram how I see it. Very different, I would say, from how we typically see holograms with like scan lines and yeah, just this dashes that goes up and down and blue. So I completely went the other side of making holograms and try to make it.
Yeah, I would say this is pretty fresh in terms of hologram style. Like, I haven't seen anything that looks like this before. Yeah, kudos.
Thank you.
Good job.
But obviously, it didn't start this way. So, and that's what I'm here for, to explain how all this came to be. I started with a very simple image. So I went, and as you can see, the most important part of this entire project was how this project panel was organized. If I did not organize this project panel, I think I would have lost ambition to continue in making this tutorial or this project, just because of how in-depth and how very interrelated every single composition is with the final composition. So if I, for example, just open the project file, you will see that I have a bunch of layers and they're all colored, and each layer is actually using another layer. So if I do not start from the very beginning with a well-organized project file, I'll lose ambition and I'll probably just move on. So yeah. Project file naming.
It's easy to get lost in something like this, especially with the layer system that After Effects has.
Yeah,
you keep stacking, and then you might lose your track.
Yeah, apparently they lost track by just taking that 20 billion to Figma instead of putting it to fix their own bugs in their own softwares that they already have. But hey,
let's get off track.
Hey, I love After Effects. So imports. Obviously, I started with a little face. I thought I would go with the most difficult faces out there. Like I could basically just download a Mia Khalifa picture and just put it here, but that would be kind of cheating because as the face is kind of pretty to my taste and it doesn't have so many details. I mean, she's full of plastic. So it's really not gonna really bring up much more challenge to making this hologram. But when you take a very original face like this, I think from Tibet or from some South...
Very human.
Yeah, it's very human. It's like there's so many rigidness in this face and there's so many details in what she's wearing. So making it as a hologram would be a challenge. So that's why I picked this picture.
Also, it wouldn't take the attention away from the,
actual effect. Yeah. So it started from this picture, and that's how it all started. It started from this picture. And what I wanted to do was get this. So I'm just going to show it now, just so that everybody has an idea of what I had in mind when I came into creating this project. This was what I wanted to create. This is it. That was my goal. Once I achieved this, I was very happy with where I was. So anything that I add after this would just be a bonus and would just make it better. So it's a bunch of techniques that are blended together to make a hologram. And then after that, I just kept on adding and adding more details. So I give myself like few weeks to just every single time pop in for 5-10 minutes, putting some details. All right, go do something. And then the next day, the next day, the next day, and it just keeps on increasing until it becomes really complex and what it is today. Now, let's get back to how actually we can do this. If we go to the project file, you'll see that here, if we just close everything here and we go into the pre-comps, I will have some files. So one of them is HLM. So what this means is it is really important for me when I create something. In every single tutorial that I've been doing recently, I've been preaching this idea of high level, medium level, and low level. Whenever you create something, if you want to add details, just follow this simple rule of creating high details, creating medium details, and creating very small, tiny little details, which is really important. So let's just take a look on how I started. So for example, we have this face right here. So this is how everything just started. A simple face, has nothing. And so I went and I added a little bit of fractal noise into it just to make it data-ish like. So the difference between this one and between if we go to low little detail here, so here there's nothing, and then if I get here, you will see that these things are way bigger and low details compared to this one, which has a lot of details. So it's all about how we use the fractal noise to mask things here. And so once I created this, I went a little bit back and I masked only the area that I wanted to have for the hologram. So if you want to have a full body, well, you can mask this according to that full body. So these are the masks, for example. So I create a mask and I just keep on animating this mosaic here. So it's the mosaic that is doing everything. Without the mosaic, nothing is happening. So now you can see that I have this detail. Now that I have this, remember, this is what I wanted to create. So it comes in like this. So how do we create that? Obviously, we're going to pre-compose everything and then I'm going to mask each thing on its own. Once I mask it, I will try to overlap this and then I will get this.
So
now,
this, you would say this is the primary base of the animation, like
yes,
this whole, okay,
is getting this animation. So once this was done, I took everything here, I duplicated it, and I reduced the fractal noise. And then I duplicated it, and I reduced the fractal noise. So now I have medium details, low details, and very high details, just like we can see here.
Okay.
Cool. So that was the difference. Now, the next thing that I needed to pay attention to is how do I want this to all look like? And that's when I started, obviously, with the very first thing that you should do when you want to set up your scene is your camera. I went into this camera and I spent some time, as you can see here, camera 1, camera 2. So this is also a very good opportunity for me to say that this project, it doesn't come from the very beginning, as you can see at the final result. You would go through a lot of changes, a lot of cameras until you really get the look. So I obviously didn't start with this. And as you can see, it's very different cameras, like completely different cameras, until I finally loved this angle. And then I just went and I linked it to a null object. Obviously, never ever animate your cameras in After Effects for a very smooth and better control. Just link it to a null control that you can just, you know, be able to see and rotate instead of just having a camera which you can see the gizmos. So once I did that, I just went and animated the camera like this. I just want to see it from all the side. That was the main idea behind this animation. It's not for presentation, but it's more of a, can I see it from all the side and still be happy with it? And I think I was very happy with it.
Actually, I think the camera advice is pretty universal for all 3D apps as well. Like, you know, it's better that you animate on a null instead of on the camera itself, because hey, who knows, maybe you'll end up changing some of the camera settings and it's easier to just parent it to that null.
Yeah, instead of having to redo everything for another camera just because you changed the settings. That's very true. So that was about the camera. And then what I did, I had this, I was kind of happy with it. Now, how can I add more details? And how can I make it really real? And that's where this little detail come in. It's very simple. It might not make so much sense to people, but actually this is what gave it a little more detail. It's this really subtle thing here. So I went and I only masked the eyes and the mouth because, you know, in a human expression, the most important things that we look at is eyes and mouth.
Eyes.
Like,
yeah, true.
Where they move. And so if I am a developer and I'm creating this technology, I would say most of the bandwidth should go to the eyes and the mouth first. And then I'll try to load the data for the other face if I have to create this technology. So I'm just thinking about it rationally. And so I just went and I added these eyes that will just sit obviously on top of all this. So if we go back to the face things, so you can see that these guys are gonna sit obviously on top of everyone, as you can see here.
They're highlighted better.
Yeah, and so they will always be on front. That would make it cool. That was about the eye. So now that we have this, I just went to another composition, and this was just because we were watching Arcane making of, and there was this thing about LCD, and you sent me this LCD map when we were discussing how Arcane was made, and you gave me this. And so I went and I remember we were streaming on Twitch, and I just went and we tried to do this. So we applied, yeah, so I just went to use the Reptile to repeat it because the texture was small. So I just went to repeat it. I multiplied it on top, and I used this little thing here to just overlay it on top. So let me explain this for people who has, you know, never used this before. So if I take, for example, a face here, okay, and let's just put this picture here, and then I'm just gonna write a text. Let's just call it Obamacare, kick W. And so if we just do this, and then let's just put it in red so that we'll be able to know that that's the text. The text is there. Now, if I click this, what does that mean? This layer will only show itself if there is any layer below it. So it's like alpha matte. It's like the mattes of alpha inverted and all that. But it depends on where you put it as a stack layer. So if I put it here, I'm not gonna see it anything because there is nothing below it. But if I create a background, now I'll be able to see it. And then
so it relies on transparency on the alpha channel of the whole composition.
Yeah. So that's what it is. That's what I ended up doing when it comes to the LCD. So I just put it on top, and I just want to see it whenever I see these things appear. And so it looks like an else. So that's what I did here. So I rip it and then multiply. Now I get a very different one because that was one of the reasons behind the stacking of the layers. So as you can see here, and which is the next thing we're going to talk about, how did we distort things inside of After Effects? And the way each layer is different from another and the quality of each layering is very important. So as you can see here, if we go back to the back one, it's going to be super distorted. And the more we go, the better the quality of the image gets, obviously. So let's look at the first way of doing how I went about distorting my images and the kind of styles that I used for this. Let's look at one of these. Yeah, cool. So here I use the obvious one, which is Venetian blind. So to those that do not know, let's make another composition. Let's put the face here. So if we create Venetian blinds, what it does is just creates this effect. But obviously, if you duplicate it and put this into 90°, this is what's gonna happen.
You get a grid-like shape.
You get a grid-like shape, and then you can even animate it if you want. So that's pretty funky as well. You could just wiggle this, and this is something people should really start paying attention to and playing with, is that you can literally wiggle anything that has a stopwatch inside of After Effects. It's not only about position, it's not only about scale, it's not only for opacity, it's for anything and everything that has this. So for example, I could just go here and do a wiggle for 50, for example. And though what's gonna happen is I'll have this funky thing. And this could have actually looked way better if I used it, now that I'm thinking about it, and I should have probably used it. But I didn't think of it at that time. So again, this is Venetian blind. Cool. And then I went and I created another one, and I just stacked it in front. And then I created another one. But this one, I used another way of doing distortion. And this is not something that I see people use a lot, but actually it's one of the best way of doing distortion, and I'm so excited about it, and I'm really happy to share with you guys this one. Check this out. So there is this effect called CC block cloud. So in the beginning, when you create it, you're just like, what am I looking at? Because the completion is at 0. And then now that you play with it, you will see that what it does, by the way, mind you, this is the full resolution. And as I am scrubbing through, the image is loading to a better... Yeah. So it just makes the loading look way more realistic in a computerized way, in a digital
It's like loading a web page, you know, back in like 2002.
Exactly. So when you think about a hologram, that's what should like hop into your mind, is that things need to have time to load because it's space. It takes time to get the data back. And so the beautiful thing about this is not only you can animate the completion, but you can literally change how many scans it will get to complete. So it gets you a lot of details. So yeah, that's one effect that I really like to use when it comes to distortion. And it's called CC block load. So please guys, use it a lot. It's just for free, literally. So as you can see, I went and I animated that. So let me just show you guys. I just did the animation. You could see how like it adds so much. And I just wiggled it as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of keyframes here.
It almost looks like the image is expanding. You're not doing anything with scale, are you?
No. I'm not doing anything with scale.
It's just the block load doing that.
Yeah, it's just the block load doing that. Yeah.
Okay.
And just because of, remember, with the high, medium, and low detail, when it combines with those details that we were doing on the image itself, that's why it looks like it's loading, because the first image that it tries to load is this. And then
it's high resolution.
More images come in, because this is how it looks like normally. So as more images comes in, that's why it looks like it's actually loading. So it's like a trick that I just got without even thinking about. So it's like that happy accident that just happened. Yeah, more Venetian, like more detailed Venetian, and yeah, it just keeps going. Again, Venetian blinds, but this one on only one side. Then I think I did this one just as it is, and then I added the LCD on top of the one that was perfect. So I was just like adding more and more quality as I go by. And these guys, the only difference that they have is that their position in Z is different. That's all. So that was about how I created this layering, which is really important into this style, the way you layer the qualities of the faces on the space.
I like how no plugins were used so far.
So far. So far. Now let's get back to the plugin thing. So obviously this is a must do thing. So let me show you the kind of plugins that were used. So this is only the plugins used. So as you can see, why I went with it, it's because it will add so much. And obviously what I used here, which is really important for this look, is trapcode form. The reason I went with trapcode form, it's because I can load an image using cubes that I can animate, and in the same time I can apply distortion on them, so it looks like the image is failing to load. And I thought that was really an easy thing that I could just plug in there and it will just work. And it's one of the reasons why I like trapcode. It's simple techniques, simple things, but will add so much value into the work that you're creating.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that you wouldn't want to do manually. Like, you know, form is right there, just use it.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you have Cinema 4D, like you literally just have it for free. You paid for it already, so why not just use it?
It comes with your Maxon license.
Yes. So what I did was I created data up from an image. The way that works, so let me just show an example of how to do that. So I'll have this here, just so that we know. I'll create a new solid and I'll make, for example, trapcode form. Cool. Then we'll get this base form. Normally the base form will have, I'm just going to rotate it just so that you guys can see. So it will give us this 3 layers. And as it says here, particle in Z. So if I have just one, I'll just get one. So let's just start with that. The first thing is I need it to match the details of the face. So here I can see 1200, 1806. So I'm just going to go into my form and make sure that the size is exactly like the picture that I'm trying to use. So I'm just going to put 12 and 1806. So now I have the same thing. So let me just create a camera so that I can go pretty quick. The reason I do this, because I could just go to layer maps, go into size and put a face here. I still see nothing because I need to tell it on what to map it over, obviously, X and Y. Now, as you can see, I have my lady here. It's pretty simple. And then I can just go into particles, add the size of them, or just random them to make it really random, but not too much. So that's how I generate a map inside of form. And the cool things that you can do is that you can just disperse them a little bit.
Twist.
Yeah. Disperse them so that it's not really perfect, and I can even twist and get things. That's a lot funkier than what we want. And then this is my favorite thing, which is you can actually just add a little bit value there, and what will happen is form will animate the particles. You can even animate the size here, so I'm just going to go 0, and the size of the particles will start to animate, and you can even do a flow depending on how you want. So that's the base idea. Obviously I went.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When do you use form versus particular? Like how do you make that decision? Because I feel like a lot of people, also have that issue where it's like, do I use form here or do I use particular?
So the reason I use form is that sometimes I could just use any other layer without having to pre-compose it. That is one. Two, it's because I wasn't sure if I'm just gonna use one layer in Z or two or three or four. But in particular, I'll have to duplicate the layer of particular 3 times, 4 times, depending on how many times I need. But here, it's just there.
Yeah, you just do it in one effect.
Yeah. So
instead of, layers.
Yeah, so if I needed more, I could just put 3 and there we go. But then in particular, I literally have to duplicate the layer, So that is one.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So I created this and obviously I animated everything to come in. So I just animated the number of particles in X and the particle in Z. So to understand what that is, it's when you create these, you have a number of particles. So the more you have, the more details it gets. The less you have, the less details it gets. So obviously how I animated it was I just started from 1, basically like this. And as we load the image, I added more particles. So the way it's going to give me a very interesting way of things coming in. So it's actually really loading like a page. And I really like that. Now, this is about how I loaded this in. Now, I went and I added one of the tricks that I use, and it's this really amazing plugin called Displacer Pro, or you could just use a displacement map. It doesn't really have to be Displacer Pro. You can just use a displacement map here, like this one here. Displacement map, which is free, comes with After Effects. Now, when it comes to Displacer Pro, I used it to distort things. So I'm not sure if you guys can see that this is too perfect. And I don't like when things are too perfect. I like to add randomness of the universe. And this added randomness. But how did it add randomness? So when you start a displacement, so let me just turn this off and let me put some Displacer Pro here. In the beginning, there will be nothing because, hey, it's not using anything. So I created a map here. So you can see that I have a thin and a fat one. So let me show you what these are. So the thin one is the high detailed one. So it's basically just an animated fractal noise, but it has a lot of details. Now, for other maps, I created this one, which is a stack of fractal noises, as you guys can see here. It's not one, but just like all of them stacked together. And whenever I finish one, I'll just add here, as you can see, screen it, and then screen it on top or add it on top. So then you will have this really detailed map that you could use for displacements. Now, let's get back to our friend here. So when we go here and I use like a fat one, and then I can just translate it on the X, for example, or I need to use the effector masks. Yeah. So now nothing is happening because nothing is being displaced. But if I start to displace this, you can see that it's getting way and way better just by displacing that. So without it, that's how it looks. So perfect, it's not really appealing. But adding a little bit of displacement, it makes it way better. And
almost
also
looks like a pixel sort of type deal,
Yeah. So this will add a lot of details, and obviously I am wiggling. As I said, anything with a stopwatch could be wiggled or expression. So I just went and I wiggled that, and so that's what gave me this look of it's actually twitching.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, that's one way of using form. So I just went and I created many of them for different reasons.
Is there a reason why you prefer Displacer Pro over the normal displacement?
Yeah, it's because of this, and we're gonna see it later. There is this thing called rotate. So let me just show you a bit. So yeah, I'll show you later. It's it gets really interesting. So that is about using form. Now, how about the kind of distortion? Since we are talking about displacements, how kind of distortion tricks that I used? Well, the first one, as you could see, I was really excited about was the block load. So that one we covered. We covered the Venetian map, and then we have the distortion, the Displacer Pro. Now, let me show you what that guy can really do. And nothing is better than these guys to explain what it can actually do. So for that, we'll really have to go to half size. Now, let me show it to you in a better way. So this is pre-rendered with only the distortions. Okay, so let's play it again. So these are distortions. All right, let me explain what's going on here before we explain the effect itself. Now, these are basically a certain maps that I created here. It's a little bit freaky, but bear in mind. Let's go one by one. So I went and I duplicated those high-level maps that we talked about in the beginning. I duplicated them, and this is how they look. So I went and I added a bit of a radial scale wipe just to, you know, delete everything outside and just keep it inside. I added a curve to change the colors to the same color that we have other maps. I added some level to really crunch this up so that I can only have the highest level, and the darkest one they go. I turbulent displays just to have a very different, you could see, like really distorted. All right. And then I added CC glass. Ooh. But in CC glass, I went and I added the image itself. So now when this is distorted, it will just distort on that map. You see, so the image is actually being distorted. But when you put it on top of the glass map, everything is moving below the distortion map. So it's not funky anymore, but it's funky inside the glass map, and it makes it really interesting and creepy. Very creepy. And then we add a mosaic to make it look digitized. Now, all I do is, as you know, level high detail, medium detail, and low detail. So I just had to stack them all together, and now I have this. So we talked about form, but there is something that used to be used long ago before form, and that was CC ball action. It's a really interesting effect that you could use to simulate something that is being created from an LCD, for example. So we can change the size of the balls, as you can see. So the more the size goes up, the less detail it's going to be. The lower, the more mosaic-y kind of thing we get here. We get this really beautiful pattern. But then if we change the ball size, you get it this way, and then this looks like it's actually a hologram because there's so much space between the dots and not all the dots are rendered. So that makes it really interesting. So what I did was basically just get one of the maps and just use that effect on top of it, and then you just get this. So that's another glitch technique that I use. So this is on top of all the others. So normally it just looks like this. With mosaic it will look like this. With the glass effect it will look like this. With the turbulent displays and all the stack that we talked about before, it looks like that. It's basically just things stacked on top of another. Now I took this, which now if we just go back to custom view, so now this is how it looks like normally. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of exposures just so you guys can see it. It's just this map, but it's just rotating in space because of the camera. This distortion has some kind of, I'll just say, does it have no, not this one. But if I use this and I use it with the ramp that I showed you before, okay, and I try to translate this, so it will try to translate it, but it wasn't enough for me. And that was where displacement map failed and why Displacement Pro was good. Because with the rotation here, I can literally get it to be outside of its area.
Of its layer.
Yeah, but Displacement Map would not be able to do this. So only Displacer Pro could do this. So it gets the pixels even outside of the layer bounds. So that was really good. But that was not all. The reason I really have to is, as you guys know me, I freaking love chromatic aberration. So Displacer Pro displays the pixel with chromatic aberration for each pixel. That is freaking nuts to even think about. And I don't know how they do it, but hey.
It would be very manual if you try to do it without, you know, this plugin, because you would have to separate all the channels, red, green, and blue, and then displace them in different values manually, and then overlay them on top of each other.
Yeah,
it's too much work.
Yeah, so that's where Displacement Pro comes in. So because of rotation and also because of this, and yeah, I mean, it gives you way too many controls that if you need anything, you could just use it, which Displacement Map unfortunately doesn't have. But Displacement Map can still do the work even if you don't have Displacer Pro. It's just that it won't be as good,
and it would take longer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it would way longer. Yeah. So what I did was I did this, duplicated it, and as you could see here from the final result, it looks like a cube. So that was the idea. So I wanted to be living like in a cube, in a glass. And so what I did was I put one on the left side, one on the right side, one on the top side, one on the below, and some in the middle of the face. And then I just went and I started placing them there and animating them so that they can be distorting around. And then the final result would look like this, as you can see.
Yeah, very sweet. silky.
Yeah. So it's more of a, this was more inspired from Interstellar, you know, when he goes into
Library.
the library. Yeah, that's
That's exactly what it reminded me of.
yeah. That's where it came
Yeah.
from. So this was creating this huge displacement scene. So this was like one of the biggest things that I needed to be done for this thing. Once that done, everything else was pretty much straightforward. So I started creating the HUD. The HUD looks like this. So it's very simple HUD. This was actually just a direct. I did not have any time to actually create it myself. So what I did was I took TOROS KOSE, a very, very great motion designer. So I just went and he has some projects on Behance and he has some textures, but unfortunately, since this was just for personal, I just went into Behance and I saw how he created those and I just tried to mimic them just to go really fast. So if we go into the HUD here, you could see here we have HUD one, and I just took inspiration from what he did and I tried to create mine like this, and I just overlaid it on top. And then I went and I created another one, but this time this one is really distorted. And then I went and I created more. So again, if you don't want to create all this, TOROS KOSE got you covered. Just go check his terminal textures and he gives the AI files. But definitely if I had a project, I would definitely need to buy his so that I can go faster. Again, this is what templates are for. This is what textures are for. It just saves you a lot of time. And yeah, I animated that. And I think this was pretty sweet as an animation for the HUD. So I used it. I used the text only. I removed everything else. And of course, some tech environments like this. This is a picture that I bought from TOROS KOSE as well. So this is the texture that was one of the pack. So it looks freaking good. It's fucking detailed. It's 2K or 4K, I don't remember. And it's really beautiful and nice and well designed. So props to him. So I just went and I used that. So that's how you use templates and textures that you download online. So never shy away from purchasing. And if it's gonna save you time, why not? I mean, yep. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. So that was about the HUD. So I just went and I placed them all around and duplicated them. So as you can see, just duplicated them, put them all around. And at the end, you will just get here with only HUDs only. So that's how it looks like. And of course, when you lay it on top of the hologram, it just fits all together perfectly. Now, that is pretty much about how this was done. The one thing that I can add is the other distortion things that I've done. And that would be the closing. It's like, how did we compose it, everything together? So one thing, we're gonna put one of the faces here, something that looks really good and is not distorted, which is this one. All right, now take a look at this. There's this really amazing plugin called BatTV. And so what it does is BatTV. So let's go back into our composition where we test subject things. Cool. So BatTV. BatTV is a plugin that literally just, as you can see here, it's for distortion. So you could choose whatever you want. You can have these scan things, and these are actually automatically animated. You don't need to do anything. So you could see that thing there going up. So let me just turn that off here. You could see that this scan distortion will just keep on animating. And that's the beauty of this plugin, is that it will look like a real analog TV, and you can even do this. So what's going to happen is the image is going to be flipping like all TV. If people don't know what I'm talking about, there's this little texture here that I have, and this is how things used to look like on TV long ago when it breaks. So
old CRT TVs, they used to do that shit.
Yeah.
Or when you have a bat signal and your thing just starts flipping around and goes to the blue channel.
Yeah. The blue channels. Yeah, let's give this PG-13. And so,
wait,
I wasn't thinking of that. My bad. So we have some noise, which is pretty good. We have some skylines as well. So a bunch of things that you could play with. So I use that for my own good here. So as you can see, without it, with it. So
I'll make sure I download this one. I'd never seen it before.
Yeah. So you just animate those displacement for you just for free. So you get this little distortion here at the bottom things. So it's pretty good. And of course, the next thing that I've added is obviously the chromatic aberration. So basically, this is the thing that I use for chromatic aberration. So I'm just going to show it to you here. It's a free plugin, I believe, now that I remember. And you could just chromatic aberration. Woo! And you can even rotate it. So
I can also add another tip. If you don't want to download an extra plugin for chromatic aberration, if you have Magic Bullet Looks, which comes with your Max on subscription, you can definitely use that for a quick chromatic aberration, which is what I do.
Yeah. I've never actually used that. I used to use it back in the days when I was learning After Effects, but after that, I stopped using Magic Bullet. But
I mean, it comes for free with your, Max on subscription, so might as well.
Might as well, indeed. So this was one. And of course, I added another displacer, and I used one of those fat fuck the noise thing that I talked about to displace everything here. So as you can see here, without it and then with it, so you can see that there is this really organic feeling. And the reason for this organic is something that I've been talking to you about when I was creating this tutorial. Is I don't really like how very generic the texture and the displacement looked like in the early versions of this tutorial. And yeah, the way to solve it was to actually really stack a good bunch of fractal noise together, and now you get a non-linear style of noises. So that's one way to do it. Another way of actually doing this was I use these little maps here, as you can see here, again fractal noise, and just laying them on top of the layers that I'm using, and they are using mosaic effect. Let's go to this example thing again, and then if I put it on top, this is what it looks like. But if I don't use the adjustment layer, this is how it looks like. So it's just a normal map. That's how it looks. Now, to make something affect everything below, you use this thing here. This is what an adjustment layer is. It's just a normal layer, but with this on. That's why when you use an adjustment layer, it affects everything below it because it has this on. That's the difference between a solid and adjustment layer. This is a solid. Okay, so this is a solid. Let's put the image in, and I put a solid on top. Nothing is happening. If I put a mosaic on top of a solid, nothing is happening. But if I turn this on, the solid becomes an adjustment layer. Now you will come and tell me, so what's the difference between this and just creating an adjustment layer like this and putting mosaic in it? Well, nothing. Because an adjustment layer is a solid, but with this on. It's just something that Adobe created just so that you can go fast. Long ago you had to do it this way, but now you don't have to do it anymore.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So that's adjustment layer. So sometimes when I create those complicated composition and I just want to apply all those stacks on top of something, I'll just pre-compose and use them as like this, as an adjustment layers themselves. So they become, yeah, they go on top. So now when I turn it on, you can see that there is they're only affecting some certain places. And that was one of the effects that I used for compositing this whole thing. Now to the big beast, how does it look like this way? Well, for this, I mainly have to thank a motion designer. He lives in London, and he's been streaming like a month ago, and he showed us this trick, and I called it the glorify trick. This trick is pretty amazing, and I think me and you fell in love with it when we saw it the first time.
I know exactly what this is.
Yeah. So let's just take let's just put this image with the glorify effect only. So this is the image and this is the glorify effect. So what it will do, it will bloom things. Like you can see this detail here. And what he does is he puts an adjustment layer and he puts it on screen. And normally this is what you get, nothing. So he goes to the curve and completely just gets only the highlights. He crushes all the black and gets only the highlight. Once he does that, he tints those highlights to red. Now they're just overlaid on top of the picture. But then he goes and blur them. Now you get a bloom. Very stylized bloom. I think it's called Yati, the Fat Man or something like that. I will link his profile and his Twitter in the description, and you guys should definitely check his tutorials and his work. It's very inspirational. Very, very great motion designer. And I am so blessed that he did his stream and shared his secrets, workflows right while I was creating this. Like
very unique, stylized 3D work. If you like that kind of thing, you should definitely check him out.
Yeah. So that was the glorify thing, and then there is the CC normal stack that I use always: a sharpen, a noise, and VR chromatic aberration, and then it just gives me that look. And of course, I throw in this legacy thing just on the side, and
light leaks.
Yeah, the light leaks. And yeah, the light leaks are here if nobody could see them. They're here. They're here. You could see them here, guys. Please notice them. They're there. But yeah, the things about this kind of things is that it's the devil is in the details, the subtlety where you don't really see. So that's how it was done. Hopefully I explained things as much as possible. Hopefully people will understand it. You can understand why I cannot do a step-by-step for this. It's insane to do a step-by-step, and it's impossible. It's possible that it will take me forever, and it's it's gonna kill me. So nah.
I mean, I would say great work with this. I know you've been working on it for a month.
Yeah.
And you've went through a lot of iterations, and you can even see it through the layers. Like if you just go through the layer stacks, you can see, okay, I tried some stuff, it didn't work out, you disabled them, and So this is not the kind of thing I would have a step-by-step step tutorial for sure.
Yeah. One thing now that I realized, so sorry. There's this little thing that I added and I forgot to add it to talk about. It's very simple. It's the stupidest thing that I've added that I think it was good. I created a cube inside of After Effects like this. It's just a cube, and that's what it is. And then I went into After Effects, and then I just started, well, I guess you could see. I just started random flickering them inside of the hologram, and you can see it in the final result here. Wait.
Oh, I see it.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
So it's like this little funny, stupid thing that I throw, little cubes in
You
there.
never noticed that until you pointed out.
And
Yeah,
then
it's
you
all at the bottom there.
So yeah, thank you so much, Yudas Farah, for being here. So I'll put the links of all your portfolio in the description, and I'll see you on the next one.
Ciao.
Bye.